Hogstye.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Hogsty. It is I, your host, Alex Zeese, and we got Dave Earl, we have Steve. Hey, guys, how are you holding up?
It's something of a minor miracle that I'm here at all, given what I've been through down here in the Texas Gulf Coast in the past several days.
Right?
Had
Yeah,
Hurricane Beryl, and I gotta say, I don't doom watch news. I don't watch
right.
news at all, to be honest.
I'm
And
with you.
a coworker called me Friday night about a work thing, and I was actually in Tennessee, and she says, "Oh yeah, be careful, Beryl's coming." And I said, What is Beryl?" Yeah, I didn't even, and and she said, "Oh, there's a hurricane in the Gulf," to which I went, "I whatever, yawn."
Right.
And then the airline started texting me Saturday afternoon that there's this hurricane coming. So at that point, then I looked into it and realized that one, I need to move my flight, and two, there actually is a hurricane coming. And so that came and went Monday. And I can say down here, we are all used to hurricanes. I also lived on the Florida Gulf Coast. I've been through
Right.
a lot of hurricanes. And if anybody's interested, I know neither one of you guys have probably been through a hurricane.
I've
But at
I've
some point,
walked through a tropical storm. That's the closest.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's chump change.
I've been on the tropical depression side of it after the
That's
hurricanes.
yeah.
So yeah,
So the
this
answer
is
is no.
nothing.
I
Yeah,
think
So
we did have a one hit DC at some point.
well,
I
you
don't
didn't
remember.
have a real hurricane if you're not on the water. I got a
No. We're
newsflash.
inland enough where it dies.
Doesn't yeah. Um. So I this one I think took most people by surprise because when I looked at it, I thought tropical storm Cat 1 hurricane. I mean, who cares? And it's supposed to be a couple of 100 miles down the coast. Granted, we're on the east side of it, but it didn't. And then it turned north and
Right.
basically had a direct hit right on Houston, the Houston area.
And
Uh,
the thing about it is this is unseasonably early still for
it
hurricanes.
is, it is, and it wasn't a ton of rain, but it was for by hurricane standards really windy.
Mm,
Um, and so that caused a bunch of problems. And because of that, there was a ton of power outages. And so what I've been dealing with here is power outages, generators, roof damage, electrical damage, all this stuff. And right up till literally minutes before showtime, as a matter of fact.
mm.
So, but if anybody out there has not been through a hurricane, it's you get used to it eventually, and it's a lot easier if you're in a house that has hurricane rated stuff, which I am.
Right.
But
Well,
it's something it's a lot, for newbies to deal to see.
yeah, I mean, it's one of those like obviously they build for them there. Just like if you
Yes.
go into like where I have my summer house or where, in Vermont, they build for winter. They're like, okay, you just have to be ready for 100 inches of snow because
right.
it'll happen.
Well, like
Yeah.
my garage door is not like your garage door. My garage door is very heavy
Right.
because it's rated up to a Category 3 hurricane. My windows are rated hurricane rated,
Hmm.
and I'm lucky that I have a house like that because not every house down here is like that.
Yeah, yeah. By the way, I double checked. The last thing I remembered is tropical storm, and I think we've only ever had tropical storms here. You're right. DC's
Yeah,
never
there's
had.
not good. Yeah,
They've
no.
always died down enough when they hit DC.
I mean, we have had an eye of a hurricane hit this house before.
Oh, sure. I mean, I think we all remember you were on the air.
Was I
Air.
on the air for that?
I don't know if you were on the air for the hurricane, but
I don't think so.
it was it was that hurricane, right? What, 4 or 5 years ago? That the big
It
one
was
that
more
hit you
than
guys?
that. Yeah, it was more than 4 or 5 years ago. There's been so many, I can't remember them all. But yeah, and it's we've had shoddy Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi's been in and out,
Hmm.
for days, and if I drop out, kids, it's not because I don't love you all. It's because my Wi-Fi died again. So
Right. And right now, I believe tropical depression or whatever it is now is just what's passing over us in DC.
probably
It's what's
so.
passing over Dave, just to help cool it off. Because I was telling you before the show, it's 110 here today. So
There
It's
are
not cool.
lots of blown over fences
Yeah.
in my neighborhood. I just had to tell roofers to take off the tarp that they had just put on because the roof adjuster is coming first thing in the morning,
Mm.
which is why I was late to the show.
Ah, gotcha. Yeah, that's the crappy part. We when we got hit by the last tropical thing, a bunch of our neighbors, their roofs got like beat the heck up
Well, and see,
because
what's
they're
good
older.
down here is everybody who can afford it has a generator of some type.
Right.
Most people don't have the built-in ones because that's really, really expensive. They're like 15 grand. But a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
people have, especially like middle class neighborhoods and up, have portable generators. And so it's this like it sounds like a lawnmower going, a really loud lawnmower, only at
Right.
every single house, And so mine, same thing. But you
Sure.
got to learn to like do without, this appliance or that appliance because you can't power it all, and.
Right. You leave the fridge and a couple lights on the generator. Everything else has to kind of go.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Depending on
what
your
I'm
generator.
what I'm contemplating now is um, wiring the portable generator directly into the board, which is possible. So
Mm.
I may do that. Not
Well,
now. I've
you
already
won't.
spent too much money this week fixing everything. So like
Right.
maybe next month I'll do that.
And let's be clear, Steve, you're not doing that wiring.
Oh, I don't do anything. Oh no, absolutely. I'm talking about hiring. Yeah, I can't build anything, especially not electrical.
No, no.
I'm all about that myself.
Yeah.
I
Well,
love
you're
doing all
handier
that.
than me. I wish I had your talent, Dave. I can't do any of that.
Well, all I know is that my week hasn't been nearly as eventful as yours, but I can say last hurricane that I was on the edge of, which is in New Jersey, was Ida when it came up in 2021. I had to look up at the year to make sure what year it was, but that one was pretty bad. They actually had a lot of damage along the Jersey Shore with that one. I
Yeah,
want to
that's the one
say,
that I'm thinking it did a number on us too here.
yeah,
Ida. Yeah.
and I believe it was a Category 3 when it hit Jersey. So, and it was a lot of flooding. Cape May took probably the biggest hit of them all. So, but yeah, I mean, but I got the outside outskirts of it, so I wasn't
Yeah.
like what you had. I wasn't
We
anything like that.
we scoff at 50-mile-an-hour winds.
Yeah. The thing we've had here in DC that was closer was actually when we had a derecho. And I know those are quick, but you do get those like 120-ish gusts.
Oh, we had that 2 months ago here
Yeah.
in
Yeah, in
Houston,
fact,
right through downtown.
Yeah.
yeah, in fact, we've had some gusts from Ida around here that was probably in excess of 60 to 85 miles an hour, but it wasn't steady, like
Hmm.
like what you probably
Oh
experienced with
yeah,
Pearl.
they're
Yeah,
steady winds. Yeah,
yeah,
Yeah.
we laugh at gusts too. It's a steady wind number that matters.
Oh yeah.
right,
Yeah.
yeah,
Although when you didn't build it right, gusts can do a whole lot of damage because
that's true.
like my wife worked outside Verizon Center at the time. Like half the street lights got knocked down by a
Well,
single
see,
gust
this
of
is
wind.
the kind of thing that it matters what neighborhood you're in, and this is where
Hmm.
you talk about things like socioeconomic disadvantage and things, because like lower price neighborhoods are older and built to lower standards, and so they tend to suffer more damage. Like this neighborhood, I'm a middle class neighborhood,
Right.
and it basically like even Harvey, fine. But you get into lower neighborhoods where they're built in the 50s and 60s, those places are just toast, and that's where you see a lot of the damage.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, so I will say the funniest thing I had happen, and I'm trying to figure out what year it would have been. It was probably sometime I was in middle school. They had us go to school. Then they decided, oh, there's a tropical storm hitting the DC area. Everyone go home. But like the school systems in DC or Virginia didn't plan for any of this. So I literally just had to walk home in this tropical storm.
They let you walk home in a tropical storm.
The 90s were a different era. Let's
Oh, what? When it was in the late '80s during the winter time, where it was a actually, it was probably one of the bigger nor'easters we had during the time where we got almost 3 feet of snow total. It started snowing overnight, so it was a few inches on the ground. They didn't close the school that I went to. They didn't close. Other neighboring schools did. So I had to walk myself into school. Yes, I walked then because
Mhm.
we did then. I walked in there and probably about maybe a half hour, 45 minutes. They said we're all getting out early at 9 o'clock. Coming back, we're walking home with like a foot of snow almost on the ground
Mhm.
walking back home. I'm like, why don't you just leave us stay home, man? Every other school district stayed home
Right.
except for ours. You gotta be kidding me.
Yeah. By the way,
So
I think I figured it out. I think it was Hurricane Fran. That would have been around the right time, or Tropical Storm Fran at that point. All right, let's switch gears. We're not going to talk about how I'm sick. We've done
It's
enough
not as fun
pity
as a
party.
hurricane.
No, no, not that's not as bad as a hurricane. Being sick just sucks, but
There's nothing interesting about that. Hurricanes
no,
are interesting, at least.
no. So let's talk about another thing that sucks, and that is Jaden Daniels' friendship with Brandon Ayuk, because it keeps on getting weirder. This whole Ayuk's trying to get out of San Francisco or negotiating whatever he's doing. And the big thing this last week was Brandon Ayuk posting a photo of Redskins practice video from, this last OTA, I assume. He posts a photo of him watching Redskins practices, which the only way he'd get that, let's be honest, is from Jaden Daniels, right? Like, there's no
mhm.
other way that a player on another team's getting your practice video. So, to me, all the other shenanigans are just shenanigans. If you're showing player, another team's player, your practice videos and stuff, that might be a bridge too far for me. So I think someone needs to maybe sit Jane Daniels down now at this point.
Um, Certainly it's inappropriate if he's leaking video or whatever. He shouldn't do that. I mean, we're kind of making an assumption
Sure, a
that it was
little,
him.
Yeah.
but
It's a
it's a
reasonable
statistical
hypothesis.
unlikely that's anyone else.
Well, I mean, it's a reasonable hypothesis. Let's say it like that.
Okay,
And even if, I mean, I don't know how common it is. Maybe it's common for players to do this. But even if it is, it's certainly very uncommon to have that player leak it to social media.
right, right.
And by the way, to the moron in our comment section who criticized Dave for writing the Brandon Ayuk piece last week,
Hmm.
guess what? Look what's in the news.
Brandon
Right.
Ayuk.
There you
Yep.
go.
Yeah. In fact, I like how Fred Smoot put it this week. He said that Ayuk needs to stop his self-serving his self-serving purposes by utilizing his friendship to get that kind of information to post to try to get it out of San Francisco. Paraphrasing him, of course, on all that. So,
Sure.
I mean, it's I just think it's more or less just Jaden Daniels watching film, his friends over, doing has a Paul doing whatever, and he's giving him the trust that he's not going to impede on that
Right.
relationship and take advantage of him. But it almost seems like that's exactly what he did for Ayuk's own gain. I'll be honest with you, if Ayuk's trying to do it to get out, the more and more that Dan Quinn and Adam Peters sees that, the more the less likely it is that they want him in this organization because he's acting that way, provided he is acting that way
Right.
to try to get out and utilizing that to do so.
Well, it seems kind of childish and,
Yeah,
like Captain Bad Attitude sort of, and that's not something that, we would need, especially
right.
at like $30 million a year or whatever he's going
No,
to
no,
cost.
definitely. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a big red flag, honestly, when you see this kind of personality stuff.
Right. It's
Um,
like a typical diva wide receiver thing.
yeah.
Mhm.
Well, and thinking back, who are the last couple diva wide receivers? It has not gone well in the league. You know,
Well,
uh,
Des Bryant,
yeah,
comes to
Right.
mind.
yeah.
And
Des Bryant,
I'll be
Des
on,
Bryant, probably the more tame of a lot of
yeah.
them.
Maybe.
And I'll be honest with you. Do you really want to bring in now? Granted, talent's there. We all know about the talent. Forget that.
Right,
Do you want to bring him in, pay him more than what you're paying Terry McLaurin?
right.
And look how Terry McLaurin is the face of the franchise, the face of what a leader should be,
He's a
and how he
captain.
holds himself as a captain. Now
Yeah.
you want to pay this guy more money with the antics that he has.
Hmm.
I'm not even sure you even want to even go down that road.
My big thing is at this point, when something like this happens, I really do think Dan, and it's got to be Dan Quinn. I don't think it's Adam Peters. I don't think it's the OC. I think it's Quinn needs to sit down and say, listen, you're a good kid. Uh, we all had friends in high school and college who were fun in high school and college. But at some point, you need to realize those friends are not are not going to be good for your long term adulthood. And
Right.
Brandon Ayuk's starting to look like that, quite honestly.
Yes.
Steve didn't have those friends because Steve probably made all the right friends in college.
Well, I
I,
was kind of a very academic person,
right. I was the guy who had to bail a lot of people out. I, and I don't talk to most of those people anymore.
I did play football, but let's just say I was academically oriented,
Right.
so I did not get involved in that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah, although the other side of this is they've saved a ton of cap space.
Yes.
And I really have wondered for months, what are you saving it for? I mean, it could be that Dan Quinn and or Adam Peters have had this in mind for a while.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know if I give them that much foresight necessarily, but maybe they have had in mind to try to make some sort of big signing because it seems kind of dumb, to be honest, to have $36 million in cap space sitting there doing nothing. Now, what they should do is have gone to left tackle, and we've been through all that.
Right.
But here we are. But maybe they were saving a big chunk of this for something like this.
Well, I mean, this team had, and we're going back a few years now, but they had a lot of success with these late in the season guys getting cut unexpectedly. You think of Deshaun Jackson. That was well after the draft when Deshaun Jackson was released and came here. Uh,
Yes.
I think
Josh Norman.
Josh Norman, yeah, Josh Norman too, right? That
There
was
you go.
Yeah.
similar.
Yeah.
So they've made those moves in the past.
That was prior leadership, but
Yes, of course.
Right.
But like, all right, Norman maybe didn't work out great, but I think Deshaun Jackson did
well, that's not the
overall.
point
Yeah,
anyway. The
yeah, yeah.
point is sometimes this happens.
Right,
Right.
right.
So
And
haven't you? But has anybody out there wondered why you have so much cap space? It's not like it's a savings account and you need a rainy day fund.
well, I mean, you
37.
can
Yeah,
roll it over to
usually,
next year.
but the rainy day fund usually for football teams like 10 to 12 million. I mean,
Right.
that's what Washington's typically done because they always burn through some more of it. When people get hurt and they have to sign new
Hmm.
players and stuff. But they've never had anywhere remotely close to 36, 37 million ever. And I think that's irresponsible. I mean, if you can bring in another player that's going to help the team,
Frankly,
what is the point of rolling it over?
with what they have, they could bring in two and still have
Yes,
10.
absolutely,
Right.
or
Yeah,
3. I mean, yeah, absolutely. So
yeah.
I really wonder. I mean, I disagree with that the cap management strategy of just saving as much as possible, and it makes
Hmm.
me
It
wonder if
could
it's money.
it could even be something along the lines that they just want to go through camp, see exactly what they have, and save someone like a Coleman for left tackle because they know Lucas isn't the answer, obviously, and they want to see how maybe things like you said with Aiyuk develops a little bit more. There are options they might be looking at in terms of trade, but the only problem is that you need a willing partner in that trade to get a player that you would want. And guys like and left tackles or something teams just don't trade. So I'm
I
not
ref-
I'm not exactly sure what they're saving it for. IU could be a good one if they're looking to try to get, or even if they see a tackle that's aging with a team that has a younger left tackle ready to take over. Maybe they reach out that area, but I'm not sure even what team that would be.
I refuse to believe that Washington is dumb enough to ignore any other left tackle out of a belief that overdrafted third round pick Brandon Coleman is a starting left tackle.
Well, I
Maybe he
think
will
they,
become that, but you guys they're not dumb enough to bet the
No,
farm on that,
I
surely.
think,
Maybe
third
they
round
are.
picks take time.
yeah, I think maybe they kind of got caught up within themselves in the draft and the move backs they had, the some of the earlier picks they made, and
Hmm.
hoping that one of some of these second round guys that would have been there for him at the back end of the second, like uh, King Kingsler, I think his name is, and
Yeah,
the one kid that you liked out there. Maybe they were hoping that they would fall there,
right.
and that they may have overthought that process, and they probably in a position where it's like, well, what are we going to do?
Yeah,
So
yeah. I mean, they still could have picked somebody at 2, but in the second round. But
yeah,
we can't just
sure.
keep going back over that right now. Um. Anyway, I don't know what. Hopefully they've quietly talked to Daniels. I know it's not the time of the year when coaches are typically talking to guys, but take a minute, talk to him. That would be my final thought.
Sorry about the doorbell if that got picked up by a mic.
No, we didn't. I don't think we heard the doorbell.
I'm
Not
still
at all.
dealing with hurricane stuff here. People are bringing
Yeah,
stuff
yeah,
back.
yeah. people bringing over casseroles and things like that.
No, it was actually a portable power bank that I gave
Oh,
to the neighbor.
oh, okay. All right, so let's move on to the next thing that happened this week. There was a leaked poll, which is fascinating, that the Skins apparently did internally. Sorry, the commies. Uh, and this poll was a poll they did of the fan base to kind of gauge where the fans are at in terms of how they feel about the team, the new ownership, things of that nature. Um, So there's some good in their poll. They call it a renewed sense of hope for the Washington Commanders. That's the name. It starts out with it's what do you call it? The compliment sandwich. This is the like bad stuff sandwich, honestly, because it's like bad news, good news, bad news. Uh, the bad news starts with most fans are still jaded.
It's like an
Eh,
inside out Oreo.
Yeah, inside out Oreo. That's right. But an Oreo is just delicious, 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 and
Yeah, but the filling is better than the cookie, I
oh,
think.
absolutely. Absolutely. Especially the new flavored ones, but you can't have them. So,
True, I
uh,
can't eat them anymore. Yeah.
yeah. So the fan base is jaded. The best they had polled fans on a couple different things. Uh, they said, "How would you describe or evaluate the experience of attending Washington Commanders games?" 33% say it's a welcoming environment. That's the best. 31 say it's family friendly. 27 say the quality concessions. I guess that means they're good. Uh, Only 15% find it easy to arrive and depart, and 13% are happy with the price of tickets. So, Dave, you're at all the games. I've gone to a couple. What would you say on any of those?
As far as the welcoming environment, I've never had an issue in terms of
Me neither.
right. So, the only issues that I had is when the Eagles come to town, then it gets dominated by a sea of green, and
Hmm.
I already know what to expect from Philadelphia fans, and that's exactly what you get when you go to the game. So I mean, hey, I mean, so it's not exactly a great rating I would give to Philadelphia fans on that part, but that's neither
Maybe the
here nor there.
team saw dumping raw sewage on fans as a part of the welcoming envirnment.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, I mean, hey, it's
It was a
if you
hot
had
day,
to
Steve.
if
We're
you had a
trying to cool you off.
if you had a washcloth and some soap at that time, I mean, hey, what family friendly, that's whatever. I don't know much about family friendly, but for quality concessions, I think 27% in terms of the club level section with the free food. You know, it was kind of like repetitive. It was
Yeah,
hit or miss on the food or whatever. So in that part, I wouldn't even go into the 20% with that one. I already gave feedback on that one itself.
yeah,
But as far as the concessions itself, whenever we ventured out to that, the concessions themselves were pretty good. I never had many complaints with that one itself. So plus I also got it for 50% off being a
hmm
club member. So I worked out really well. So, but and the thing that people need to understand for arriving there is actually really wasn't too bad driving with the traffic. But everybody that goes to a game, stop trying to race out to your car, run through everybody else, and try to beat everyone out. Let the first wave go. If you're not part of it, just wait for a little bit. Because if you rush out there and get crammed up with everybody else,
yep.
if you would have just waited, you're gonna leave almost the exact same time you would have anyway.
Hi,
You
my
Just
name
know,
go
is
but
hang
Hi,
out.
my name is Steve Thomas. Nice to meet you. I
Go
am the one
go.
that will run and push everybody out of the way to get out first. I'm definitely that person. I'm never going to
I
be happy just waiting in a crowd like that.
well, see, that's the thing. You don't have to wait in the crowd. You just go right into the
I,
concourse area,
I
whatever, and
am
just take your
like
time,
a
chill.
type A person.
Yeah,
I
he
walk really, really fast. And there's no way I'm going to do what you suggest. If Dave, if you and I go to a game together, I'm ditching you 100% afterwards because I'm not going to wait around
I
like
mean,
that.
the problem is if you stay to the end of the game, it's already too late because there's
Right.
just enough people who will always leave in the
This is why
third
you have to
quarter.
be good at
Yeah.
rudely pushing your way through crowds, which I've got
Right.
to be an expert at this.
Now, I mean, if they've been blowouts or whatever, or the game was just hopeless, yeah, I'd leave with like a few minutes left to go in the game, and I'm out right away. But if I
Yeah,
stay the whole game,
you're
they,
done.
yeah, I just walk up to the Now, see, the concourse I go to is covered area.
Right. It's
With
got nice
comfortable seating
couches. I
also.
know.
Yeah, so I just chill there. I look out the window and I watch everybody rushing out, trying to get out to their cars, and I laugh at everybody. And
Right.
it's like, hey, well, I say to the wife, I look at that right there, and then I
Here's my
stroll on
tip,
out. Boom.
and I'm gonna take this advice if I go to games for myself because I didn't do it the last time. Pack a post game meal in the car and just have it there ready to go. Like a nice cold cut sub, something that you're not worried about. Leave it in the
Right.
cooler. Leave some sodas because one, if you've been drinking, you want to sober up, but you're also gonna want something to drink in general. And then you
Drink
just
some soda before you hit the wheel.
right. No,
To
no,
mask your drunkenness. That's a
I,
great.
I
Please,
literally
that
don't
is
mean
not
get
legal
beer.
advice.
I mean soda. Um, but also there's so much woodland around it, you can just go pee in the woods. So like you have a bathroom right there too. You're in good shape.
Okay, so all of what Alex just said should be ignored. Do not pee in the woods, which is indecent exposure. Do not get in the car and mask your drunkenness with soda.
I'm not
Please
saying
don't do
mask
any
it.
of
I'm
that.
saying you're drinking more liquid to help you sober up. Like that's a different thing. I'm not. First off, you mask alcohol with cigarettes. Everybody knows that.
Okay, everything Alex has said is going to get us sued. Okay. For the record, I'm not a part of any of this advice.
The sandwich. I think the sandwich is actually good advice. Have a post game meal in the car though. Is a way to go.
That's like one little tiny bit of okay in a sea of awful, though. That's the problem.
And
Steve, you
besides, when it goes to the peeing part anyway, I think at least 30% of the fans there do it actually in the parking lot before they get fully into their car, the door on the ground anyway. So
yeah.
it's just horrible half the time when you walk out to the parking lot.
Oh, it is the cesspool of humanity
Yes.
moment when you're out there. It really
Yes.
is. Especially if it's like Philly or Dallas or not so much New York. New Yorkers at least somewhat keep it civil, but they might fight you, but they don't pee on you.
I mean, there's a reason why Philadelphia is commonly referred to as the city of hate,
Yeah, yeah.
or maybe just
We're
referred to just by me. One of the two of those things are
we're the
true.
brotherly we're brotherly love. What are you talking about? City of brotherly love. Come on
You
now.
can call yourself whatever you want. It's fine with me, but that
Dave
doesn't
and
make
his
it
five
true.
brothers beat
We
up one dude. They that's brotherly love.
we there you go. See, we have a big sign in the city that says love.
Right.
I mean, come on, Steve.
The irony totally not
Yeah,
lost
the
on
irony
anybody.
isn't lost on me on that.
Yeah. All right, so let me get the rest of the poll stuff that they had in there.
Well,
They
real
do
quick,
cite
just by
that.
the way, 13% are happy with the price of tickets. Get ready for that to be demolished when a new stadium
Oh
comes. It'll
yeah.
be like
Oh
0%. But go ahead.
yes. The fans are overall very happy with the new owners and have more optimism. 81% feel positive about it. A third more fans are planning on attending games this season because of that. It looks like. Uh, the name change still not popular. 63% think they should change the name again still, but no one can agree on a name. So, uh, for whatever that's worth, they polled and the most popular name was going back to Washington football team with 90% of the vote. Then Red Wolves, then Defenders, which is already a football team here, so you'd have to like buy that naming right technically. Um, then Red Hogs, Brigade, and Armada are still on these polls. I don't know why they keep on trying to push Brigade and Armada. I don't know why.
What about
Yeah.
Redskins? Where's that on the poll?
Well, I'm assuming that was a large portion of the winner, which was none of these, which had 42% of the vote.
Probably so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say all. Someone said all these, and I'm like, no, it's not gonna be all. It's probably
There's one person out
30%.
there, somebody less than that. I bet you it's the vast majority of them.
No, no, I'm saying 30 of that 42%.
I know. I think
Yeah,
it would be the vast majority of them, much higher than 30.
you think
I
so?
think
Okay.
more like 41.9%. you
I,
know.
I don't know if it's that. We don't know. They just didn't put it in there, right? So, uh,
What registers to me about this poll is they don't even mention Redskins.
well, I mean, it
Well, they're
doesn't
not
surprise
going
me.
to. They're not going to.
Yeah,
They
I
should.
mean, for as much as they should, They're not going
If the
to because they're
Kansas City
never going to go
Chiefs
back
can
to
be the Chiefs, why can't Washington be the Redskins? If Dan
see,
Snyder really gave up the name Redskins because FedEx pressured him to do so, FedEx is gone.
Sure.
right.
But also Nike pressured them. Also Amazon pressured them. Also,
Yeah, but that was
yeah,
like a cascade effect.
Yeah, that was a ripple effect on that. Yeah,
yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. But see now, and this is the point to which I tell the people out there that say get over the name change. The name Commanders is fine. Stop being children about it, or being petty, or this, that, and every other comment under the sun. You guys have to understand when this rebrand happened, the fans were supposedly be an integral part of it. Commanders
Mhm.
was never a part of all that. Nobody wanted it. Nobody voted for it. Nobody cared about it. The names that were on the list that people wanted, like Red Wolves or Hogs, Red Hogs, or just Wolves or whatever,
yeah.
that's what everyone wanted, something along those lines. And yet you go through and you pick Commanders. And the excuse for going to Commanders was weak to begin with because of copyright issue, or because of copyright issues, all that stuff and
Listen, they
everything.
could have paid that guy, paid Philip
Oh,
McCauley
absolutely.
off. I mean,
Right.
And I think with was it Red Wolves? There's a college
Red Wolves,
team that
college team,
you'd
yes.
have to come to agreement with them too, I assume. But
And you
yeah,
would have been able to
yes.
do that.
right.
So it's like so all those who want to keep pushing the name changers off to the side and say just move on, I
Hmm.
think you got to realize at this point of the game, you guys either need to kind of get in line with all this, or you guys need to be the ones to move off to the side and just be quiet
Yeah, I
because
agree
the
with that.
majority of fans do not want this. Plus, it still holds whether you want to agree with it or not. People out there, this has Dan Snyder stink all over still because
Yeah, that's the
I mean,
biggest thing.
yeah, because that was like his one last final dig at the fan base. Some people say more of a conspiracy idea, but it's not a bad idea.
It's
That
not
hey,
that. It's just like amateur hour. That's all it was. But
oh yeah,
this
absolutely,
name change thing,
Hmm.
don't tell me what to think.
right.
Random
I
Twitter
agree.
people out there, I will think whatever I damn well please, and you don't have to like it. You don't have to listen to me, but don't tell
Sure.
me to get over something.
I
This was
mean,
very important to me.
Right.
Redskins
mhm.
was, and is, and the only, honest to God, the only I could sort of pretend about watching football team because it wasn't really a nickname.
Right.
None of these, none. I can tell you, none of these are. I'm not really a go back kind of person, but I mean, none of these register with me at all. And I'm not going to give blind loyalties to a team, and just when they change everything about themselves. I
Well,
don't owe you anything.
so it is interesting that you mentioned that. So another couple things that have kind of come out. There was a story done by one of your favorite people, Front Office Sports, Steve. They interviewed the Wiesel family about the logo, and there has been some movement on this whole like honoring the logo and what they can do with it. One of the interesting things they are proposing, and I think everyone's being very realistic.
Who's
Not,
they? Is the team
uh,
or the family?
the family and
Oh,
the
okay.
team and that senator from Montana have all been talking, and it sounds like they're talking in earnest from that article.
Okay.
Um, One of the proposals, which I kind of like, is if you can't bring it back, give the copyright in some fashion to the Blackfeet tribe, and they can use it to raise money for themselves. So they could sell merchandise, and that would go to the tribe. There's talk of like obviously doing things like plaques or whatever else, that kind of more traditional remembrance stuff.
I mean,
But
it'd be a trademark, not a copyright, but
well, yeah, trademark. Sorry,
I'd be all in
Trademark,
favor
yeah.
of it.
I
In
have
fa-
100-degree fever, Steve.
I mean, I don't mean to nitpick, but I mean,
No, no.
it's I'd be all in favor of it.
Yeah, so would I. I mean, because even though you and I have always kind of disagreed on the name, I was always I knew it was going to happen, so I had accepted it. It's always been a cool freaking logo. It's a great logo, and if Dan had been smarter about all this, he could have figured out a way to keep a lot more of that.
He
You
could
know,
have figured out a way to keep the name too. He didn't have to bow down to this.
he
This
could
You're
have,
like
right
but
about
pressure
that.
he
from
definitely was
Black
not
Rock
smart
and
enough to
family.
figure that out.
No, he's not. He was
Yeah,
not.
Well, I
yeah,
mean, as far as a logo, you could go and pick a route of like even like Warriors or something that's going to tie to that logo, and use the logo on the helmet because let's be honest, that logo isn't just a random logo. That's a
right.
logo of
A person. Yeah.
Yeah, of a person, and when you see the picture of that person and you look at the logo, it's almost identical.
It's
Right.
actually a very
So
well done logo.
Yeah.
absolutely it is. So I mean, there are ways on making it work to get it back on the helmet too.
Right.
And I hope they're looking at that too, to be honest.
See, I don't think that happens without a name change, like
Oh
into
no,
something
of
Sure.
like
course
Oh,
not.
no,
It would make no
Warriors.
sense with C words.
Right.
It has no relevance
right.
And it's
whatsoever.
Oh
just,
yeah.
I mean, technically it is a chief of a Indian tribe on the logo, but chiefs are not called commanders.
By
So
the way, you know what's
No,
not
right.
on this list is warriors. Did
yeah,
everybody notice
yeah,
that?
No,
that's a
yeah.
good point. They didn't even ask about it,
No.
which would have been probably the most popular of all the, none of the above names.
That and the ones with red in it, red wolves, red hogs. To me,
Yeah,
you know,
a lot of people wanted to keep red in it. You're right.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, I thought that was interesting too that they've actually been talking about that with the white cells. Then you have, so I do think there's two things that are interesting to me that have gone on. We'll get into the uniform change because that's the obvious one. But there was a subtle thing that I noticed today, and I actually listened to this. The team has started a podcast to really talk about the history of the team. And the first podcast, they've only done one. Now, who knows? This is probably just some intern doing these. They interview Doug Williams, Joe Gibbs, and a bunch of old people who were part of the staff during the Doug Williams Super Bowl to like get behind the scenes stories. And it's not, I mean, there's some stuff in there that obviously we all know. There's some stories in there. I'm too young to remember this. Did you guys know that Doug Williams had a massive root canal done just before the Super Bowl?
I don't
I
remember
don't
that.
remember that.
No,
No.
Yeah,
no.
apparently, like he could barely sleep because he had a like tooth problem, and like
Huh.
the day before, or 2 days before, the team had a dentist who was interviewed in this. Apparently, he's still alive, and the team dentist had to like do an emergency root canal on him.
The
So
team was
like,
like, "Shut up and quit whining and get out there."
well, yeah. So very good, worth listening to. What is it's called? Hail Tales. Terrible title,
That is
but
horrible.
um, you know,
This team cannot do names for anything.
no, they really can't. But worth listening to that if you're a nostalgia guy. And the reason I bring that up is I do think that the Harris Group has come in and seen what happened with the name change and said, you guys like screwed up massively, like going away from the team history way too much. And I think they're way more amenable to bringing some of that stuff back as best they
Right.
can. And
Right.
that brings us to a little thing they did, and that's adding gold pants to the uniforms this year. Uh, Steve obviously is not going to care. You can tune out.
Yeah, I don't care.
But if you talk about this team, it's the burgundy and gold. And I know the
Yes.
colors are still not quite right, but at least now they look burgundy and gold again. And, getting rid of the white pants, getting rid of the unitard all red look, it looks so much better when you see those shots of the team with gold pants again.
I do think the all red is stupid. I mean, it
Yeah,
looks like a
Oh,
practice uniform or something.
I saw part of that color rush garbage that they're doing
yeah,
anyway.
yeah.
So
But I think this is a good move, and I think this is them realizing we missed completely on the uniforms. They look half-assed, they look
yeah.
disorganized. So let's do what we can now until we got 2 years left and they can change it. So then in 2 years, fix everything. But
Well, see, when I saw that, because one of my biggest concerns was, and what kept me with the team, is the burgundy and gold color scheme. And then when they did the all black like that, and they had the color rush to red, and
right,
how they had the white with the red and all that, it was like like the only thing burgundy and gold that I would watch at the time was just the helmet. That wasn't
right,
enough for me, and it was frustrating. It was because that was the only thing that was left that was keeping me with the team was that color scheme. Everything else was stripped away from me, unfortunately. So for me personally, I was happy to see that coming, and they're going to use that more throughout the season because let's be honest, the burgundy and gold would have been the last straw. If they changed the colors, I wouldn't even be on this podcast with you guys.
sure, sure. I
So
Yeah,
wouldn't
you
blame
would,
you.
Dave. You can't quit us.
I mean, Dave likes us, but he can quit the show.
No, he can't. He has a contract. You're unbreakable contract.
Big
Unbreakable
contract.
contract. Yes, I'm locked in.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
But
skipped a part of the poll, by the way, just for the
oh, did
record.
I? I'm sorry. What did I skip? The
That
stadium thing, didn't
stadium,
I?
yeah.
Yeah. So they did also poll about the stadium. 55% of the fans definitely want the stadium back at RFK, and nowhere else came close. Apparently, was
I
the
don't know why that is. I mean, that's what you're going to get nostalgic about. You're not going to, you're not going to insist on Redskins back, but you want to build in an inconvenient
well.
place.
To be fair, they didn't ask about Redskins back, so we don't know. That number probably would have been higher than
Maybe,
55%.
maybe true, but I have come to think that I continue to believe that building at the RFK site is the most difficult, and it's actually the most inconvenient, spot. It's very hard to develop that land around there. It's not in a good area. It's federal land, all of that. Um, I think it would be better for them to go out into either Maryland or Virginia and do a big whiz bang development in associated. And they can't do that in downtown DC like that. Not on their RFK site.
No, I mean, no, they can't do a 50-acre
No,
development like you're talking about. No,
correct.
because they need
Space.
space for that.
And
And yeah,
also, I mean, it's just not in a good area in DC anyway.
I mean, it's a rich area, but it's not a yeah, it's not a good spot.
No.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
The
when you look at the current stadiums that's being built now, and seeing especially like you see what Josh Harris wants to do with the Sixer Stadium. They
mhm,
want to go outside Chinatown up here, which has been a whole big mess up here. He
right,
wants to be in a situation where he can maximize not only just the team, but the building and the venue itself and
right.
where it's going to be placed. And I don't think DC right there, RFK site's going to maximize that because you see what the newer NFL stadiums are doing. They're doing what you said, Steve. They're kind of like SoFi. Well, SoFi's kind of had that benchmark right now anyway, with all the developments
It's
around
the
it and
premier
everything.
stadium in the
Pretty
NFL.
much, yeah. So you have the opportunity to put something that's kind of within a stone's throw of DC, and you can have that massive development right there because now that draws in not just with the team and with the fans, but you're talking about other avenues of entertainment,
Mhm.
Super Bowl potentially, all that stuff.
Commercial, retail, all kinds of stuff.
Exactly. And all that's, and people are not going to want to go in the Metro DC for all of that. I'm sorry.
That's what I'm saying. They're not.
Right,
They don't want to do
exactly.
that.
So,
That's exactly what I'm saying.
but
I I mean, I think the bigger problem is there aren't a lot of lots out
no.
there in the DC area that make any sense.
Well,
Like
Right.
I listen. I mean, Ashburn is still a part of the DC area.
yeah, but
There's
getting to
space out there.
Ashburn, there's not highway infrastructure or
You
anything
have
like
to
that.
develop that along with the project.
Right, and Virginia doesn't develop infrastructure. That's their problem.
But the developers do that. I mean, it may be done through the city, but I mean, through the government, but the developers are paying for most of that stuff. Okay. I mean, it's possible to plan it, master plan all that.
I just don't see Virginia getting that organized. That's my concern. Maryland maybe. Virginia has kind of shown that anytime push comes to shove, they fall apart. So this is like the fifth time recently in history that a major stadium was like, "We want to build here," and they're like, "Nah," or they say
I
yes and then they shoot themselves in the foot.
I only ask that none of like the local governments, all three local governments, please don't offer a penny of public funds for this.
I
That's all
think we
I
all
ask.
agree there, but I think we
Yeah.
all know
That's
they're
not going
going
to
to.
happen, but that would be
Yeah,
my request.
yeah. It'd be it's one of those few things where I would even be in favor if we said federal ban, no more paying for stadiums with public dollars. I'm okay with that at this point.
I mean, I also want Brooklyn Decker to show up at my house for a
Right,
sleepover,
right.
but that's not going to happen either.
Neither,
So,
neither of these things will happen.
correct.
Brooklyn
You can
Decker,
take
good
the
point.
couch. I don't mean anything dirt. Just you can have the couch. It's fine.
Um, all right. So, what else do we have? We're already at 43 minutes. Let's knock out the running backs first, just because
All right.
I know we got to do that. Um, so that's our position group breakdown this week is Washington's running back room. Dave, you wrote it, so why don't I turn it over to you?
Let me get to my article that I conveniently stepped away with
Oh
pulling up
no.
other information, but I
Well,
am
it's
now
on the
Well,
there.
while
Yes,
Dave is
sir.
finding it,
hotset.com.
what this
No,
position
I'm there.
breakdown series is
I got it.
is our annual attempt to run through all of the position groups on the Washington's roster post draft, post free agency to kind of see where they
Yep.
ended up. And so this week we've arrived at running backs, which is Dave.
Yes. So now, as far as the running back room, we have the newly acquired Austin Eckler, 29 years old, 8 years experience, and on a fresh 2-year deal, taking up about 1.26% of the cap space. I say all that why? Because it really kind of indicates the kind of role he's going to play in this offense, like you talked about recently, Steve, and I do agree with that. And I go there first and I talk about him first because I know what we spoke about him over recent shows about whether he's kind of hitting that wall or he hasn't been all that productive over the recent part of his years. But I think maybe we need to kind of rethink that just a little bit because, like I had spoken about in here, in 21 and 22 were 2 years where he had over 200. His only 2 years he had over 200 carries, and in 21 where he had 107 receptions. They were a couple of his more productive years. And when he went into week 1 of last year before his high ankle sprain, he was having a game of his life to start the year with 117 rushing yards and 17 carries, 4 receptions, 47 yards, and 2 total touchdowns before he had the high ankle sprain. And that was the injury that kind of hampered him a lot last year. And then when we talked about, he seemed like he was kind of on a downside. High ankle sprains, as we all know, is not very easy to to recover from. So I think there's a little bit more of a potential we could get out of him. Yeah, granted, I get at his age and he's at that point of his career, but there could be something there that we could have, and he's going to have to take on more of a role than what you talked about, Alex, last 2 weeks ago in the interview that he had about the fact he's not cut out for that hardball role.
Yeah.
Well, he's going to have to be ready to get probably anywhere from 12 to 14 carry the game plus the targets he's going to get in the passing game. So, your thoughts on that?
I
I
mean,
mean,
I think he has to.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I understand that Austin Eckler was hurt last year. I get it, but nonetheless, he has not been effective. He was not nearly as effective last year, and given his age, I really think his prior franchise probably saw him as a used asset. A
that's quite
declining
possible.
a
Yeah,
declining asset.
right.
And notice like, yes, he's going to be the starter, but he's contractually Washington didn't exactly sell the farm for this guy
No,
either. Like is
No.
from a cap perspective, 3.2 million, way far and away the biggest in the group. And his dead cap this year, 4 million. Pre June 1, which are already passed. But next year, 2025, they could cut him in an instant if they wanted to. From a cap, $5.1 million cap hit, $1.5 million dead cap. If he does not perform, he is gone
yeah,
next year. This is a try. It really is a tryout with an option, basically. That's what it is.
right.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
just don't have any faith that he's going to do all of a sudden morph into like Mr. Starting 3 down running back.
Well, that's why I emphasize so much on just like the potential is there for him to pick up where he left off, where he got hurt. But like you said, the age and what the prior team looked at him as, it could also be Harbaugh want to move on to, do something different, rebuild that offense. And, he wanted more of a prototypical 20, 25 plus carry type of guy too, as well. So we don't know exactly what they were thinking. So all of that kind of, he's basically an ultimate wild card going into this.
I think the big thing that can't be emphasized, or I don't know if we're emphasizing enough or not, it's really that he fills a role that the team lost when they got rid of Gibson. And let's be honest, Gibson never quite worked out to be the dual threat running back that we had hoped.
Right.
Like he was solid, but I think we kind of all hoped he would turn into an Austin Eckler, and he never quite did that. So if this is your pass catcher, your third down, third and long guy, and then Brian Robinson's your bruiser, I think it makes sense as like a logical way to build a running back room, with that 1-2 punch. So I even if he doesn't work out long term, I think it's a good enough for now kind of situation at running back is what he provides.
Right. So that's a nice segue into the other part of the running back room. And I'm going to mention both Brian Robinson Jr. and Chris Rodriguez. And I'm doing that because neither one of these two guys had the loyalty to the front office. We all know that because they didn't
Mhm.
draft them. And so when you look at Brian Robinson Jr., for as much as everyone loved the story and everything, going right back to what we've talked about in this show, and Steve, you've harped on it time and time again. He has pedestrian numbers. I mean, he's shown that he can truck uh, defenders. He does show significant power in his runs, but he's inconsistent. He's inconsistent with those runs where his 2-year career is only average of 4 yards a carry. So now he's proven to be a reliable or a growing pass catcher, getting 43 targets and 36 receptions last year. Some of his receptions weren't easy receptions. They weren't just simply dump offs all the time either.
Mhm.
But when you look at Chris Rodriguez, who they drafted last year, I mean, you're talking about a guy who has, before contact 2.4 yards, before contact 2.4 yards, after contact. So he's always making positive gains. I say that because Brian Robinson only averaged a 2-year career. He was 2.2 before contact, but only 1.8
There you
after
go.
contact afterwards. So you can see that, with Chris Rodriguez, he's much more of a compact power, lower, powerful runner more consistently. And will that translate? We'll see.
Well, to
Because
be fair, though, I mean, we can't keep going without noting that the sample size for Chris Rodriguez is a lot smaller than Brian
Sure.
Robinson. So
Well,
I think he
that's what I was
deserves to
going
get an
to next. Yeah.
opportunity
Yes.
to beat out Robinson, but I don't know if it's guaranteed because this
Correct.
remains to be seen.
Right. And that was actually going to be part of my point too. I mean, he's only had uh 51 total attempts last year, spread over, and that's it. So yeah, the sample size is small, but he was effective in his attempts. So with there being no loyalty to either one of these guys, he's going to have a prime opportunity to sit there and show those 51 attempts and that 4.8 yards per carry average and that
Mhm.
2.4 yards after contact average is no fluke, and this is who he is. If he can prove that and he can be consistent with that, and if Brian Robinson Jr. struggles at all, you can see that switch happen almost immediately given the opportunity to Chris Rodriguez early in the season.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. And for that matter, I mean, it's crazier things that happen than a guy like Rodriguez ended up as a starter.
Right.
Oh,
I'm not
absolutely.
predicting that. I'm saying crazier things that have happened, especially in the running. A lot of running backs coming from out of nowhere. It seems like to me.
Oh
Right.
yeah. Running back is that kind of fluky position, right? Where
Kind of,
if a
yeah.
guy's good for 3 or 4 years, it doesn't matter where he's coming from, and they'll just use him.
Right.
Yeah, I like Rodriguez. I think him and Robinson make a lot of sense, both as kind of bruisers. But I'm actually more interested to talk about some of these other guys they brought in too.
Right. Well, you have Jeremy McNichols, 6 years in. He played for 4 other teams.
Hmm.
Career rushing average 4 yards per carry. Not much in the receiving game, just in 2021 where he was used the most, where he
Hmm.
had 28 total receptions that year. I mean, he's just a classic journeyman. I think he's a guy for depth. Obviously, I think he's a guy that, if these other two guys, these rookies, don't pan out, and only one makes a practice squad, you have a guy in Nichols. If you keep 4 running backs, that would be your fourth guy. But I consider him kind of a fringe fourth guy because if you had of these two rookie running backs, Austin Jones and Michael Wiley, Austin Jones is one that's the most intriguing to me out of USC.
Hmm.
He was their 3 down guy. He was the pass catcher. He's very elusive out of the backfield. He's quick off the reception, gets off field quick. He's got excellent vision. He's not a great inside runner, so he has to improve on that. But when he's in open space and you get him to the outside, I mean he's electric. He doesn't have blazing speed. I forget what his 40 time was. I think it was the 4.51. I think it was, or 4.89 or 4.49. So, but in terms of game speed and acceleration after the catch, He absolutely has that. So he's a guy that I'm watching carefully, because if he makes a mark, that's going to probably determine where Jeremy McNichols is on this roster, if he even makes the roster.
It's 458. I googled it real quick,
Four
but
five eight. Okay.
yeah, I also am a big I don't want to say fan of Austin Jones, but he does intrigue me quite a lot.
Right.
Uh, he's one of the more athletic, better pass catchers that came out of this draft. It was a weak running back draft class, we know that, but
Right.
he was a guy that I was like, taking a flyer on him is a great move. Honestly, like it, he could end up being a perfect spellback for Austin Eckler.
I always liked him at USC. I
Hmm.
think he's got potential.
Yeah, he's got definite potential.
Well, listen, Washington has to keep a couple of these guys on the practice squad.
Right, right, and they'll probably keep 4 running backs, right? Like that seems pretty normal now. We'll see.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, we'll see. And then certainly at least one after that on the practice squad.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So do we want to give our guesses?
I
Sure.
mean, sure. I mean, mine are easy. I mean, Eckler's going to be the starter by virtue of his finances.
Right.
Robinson, highly drafted. He's going to be number 2 or the co-number 1, and then
Hmm.
Rodriguez, and then I'm going to say Austin. I'm going to say Austin Jones.
You
Gets
think
the
he
Yeah, I
fourth
makes it?
think.
spot.
Yeah, I think Austin Jones bumps out McNichols. I think he just brings too much upside. McNichols, he's just a run-of-the-mill running back. And Wiley, obviously, I think will go right to the practice squad.
Yeah, yeah. I think we're all in agreement, honestly, because I'm
Yeah.
excited to see what Jones could bring to the table. So it, it'll be interesting to say nonetheless, because I look at him and I see a little bit of like who's the Thompson. I see a little bit of Thompson there. If that, it might be a little much, but
A little bit. Yeah, I
yeah,
get your point.
yeah. So let's talk about. We have a few minutes left. They've been doing this new Hard Knocks. Hard Knocks had started to get stale a couple years ago, and they've now added a bunch of new. Here's mid-season Hard Knocks. Here's this and that Hard Knocks. They've added a off-season Hard Knocks covering the Giants and what they did this off-season. We're 2 episodes in. If you haven't watched it, and I imagine Steve didn't have power,
I
so he
have
didn't watch
not.
any of it.
Yeah, had no power, no
It's
TV.
fantastic though. You're an off-season nut like I am, Steve. Uh, it's very interesting to see how these GMs act, and it's they give you a lot here. They're
It's
not.
kind of funny is like having spent time in NFL teams' offices.
Hmm.
Like the off seat, like certain parts of you, there's absolutely nobody there.
Right.
Yeah. So are they filming this in like early June when nobody's there? It's just gonna be like a camera at a hallway.
It's the whole off-season. So it
Is it?
starts with the Giants losing and not getting in the playoffs, and they cover that week all the way supposedly through the draft to today. So they've only gotten to like the combines and stuff like that at this point. But, like you see the general manager talking with Saquon Barkley about like not resigning him. You see their interviews at the combine, which is interesting because they interviewed Jaden Daniels at one point, and they're having him do the whiteboard thing. Same with Drake May. And that's been, of course, for Washington fans, the biggest thing to look at is, oh my gosh, like this is how they evaluated Jaden Daniels. And they don't say, oh, this guy's not a second round pick or anything, but people have been kind of breaking down what they saw there of Jaden Daniels, which is interesting.
I can't honestly say I've seen it yet, obviously,
Right,
for obvious reasons. But I think sounds fascinating. I've always loved Hard Knocks.
right. I think we all do at some level.
One point we were on their HBO's media list because when Washington almost was in consideration for it.
Right. Yeah, we tried
No, I
to
was
get
in
in.
with them, but and they once Washington wasn't selected, it was
Yeah.
that was it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Dave, you've seen some of it, right? Or at least the
Right.
clips online and stuff. What are
Yes.
your thoughts?
As far as just the clips I've seen, like I share with you guys online, I mean, like the one where Dabo's having the interview with Jaden Daniels, and he's telling him, okay, take the X out, put the F there, take the Y out, put a Z
Yeah.
there, whatever, and so forth. And then he asks him about the play. Well, tell me what the, tell me what the what the call is, and what are you going to do, whatever. And so he's call. Instead of saying F, instead of saying X, he says F. He kind of stumbles over that. And at the end of the answer is, well, you got to cover one. What are you going to do? And he goes, well, throw a touchdown. Jane Daniels getting hammered for that because he forgot the entire play because he said F instead of X. And he gives a amateurish grade school answer of, I'm going to throw a touchdown. So yeah, and this one guy, Joe NFL, whatever his name is, he's been all over Jaden Daniels since the offseason, talking about he's not even a first round pick and everything. And
Yeah, I've
so
seen that guy.
yeah, and so it's like, he's getting ridiculed. He couldn't even remember to play, but yet there was a clip where he was he was clearly given a play prior to these series of questions. You didn't see it in
Right.
this clip. So in the clip, Dabo was asking, is like, well, if you run into any problems, how are you going to handle it? He's answering, I'm going to go to family, I'm going to do this, that, and he's answering it. Dabo goes, well, hold on, wait a second. What was that play I told you about?
Yeah,
He spits out the play right away. Boom. I mean, come
look,
on, man.
here's the thing. All things have to be taken in context, okay?
Yes.
I mean, the guy might have stumbled over a play or whatever. I mean, it happens. We've done like 1,000 hours of these, shows, and we have all stumbled. Dave maybe fewer, but I mean, we've all stumbled
Right.
over stuff all the time. I mean, and anybody who does broadcasting knows that. Anybody who's been in a
Right.
meeting knows that. I mean, the implication sort of with that is that Jane Daniels is dumber, than Drake maybe, and that's you can't make that kind of conclusion based on one, 2 minute, part of some TV show.
Wasn't
That's
even
just
2 minutes,
not
like
fair.
30 seconds.
Whatever. I mean,
Yeah,
even
right.
worse. I mean, that so in this, I don't know who Joe Football is, but he probably knows more than we do, okay, but I think it's a bit disingenuous to ascribe a conclusion on somebody based on a 30-second clip.
Right.
Yeah.
I completely agree. I think that uh it's interesting to watch all this, but they're not getting. I got an issue. They don't get a lot of value from the whiteboard part. They get value from that moment where Daniel says, or where Dable says, "Quick, rename it." That's where they're getting the value. It's
Right.
they're trying to get you off guard to see how you respond. That's how these interviews go. It's I'm gonna pepper you with 40 questions and see what happens really
Right.
fast. You know,
And
like
see, and see,
that's what they're
and
doing.
see, and that's what I was alluding to is the fact that that one guy wants to hang up on that one mistake he made, but yet, just like what you had said, he knew a play that was given, and then he was asking a completely different series of questions for a good extended period of time. And in the middle of Jaden Daniels' answer, in the middle of one of his answers, Dabo just stops right away and then goes back. What was that play, guy? So, and he
Look,
answered it right away. So it's like,
I mean, I
so
think we're reading way too much into all this. It's entertainment.
no, yeah,
What
you're
you're
right about
seeing
that.
is a like a snippet of a much longer interview.
Right.
People should not take this as gospel.
And that's
And it's in HBO is the producers of the show at HBO are gonna produce it in the way that they think is best, and it's
right.
gonna attract the widest audience. They
Sure,
don't necessarily have it out for Jane Daniels or whatever, but it's just not necessarily reality.
you're editing a story to make the story entertaining. I
Yeah,
Correct.
completely
Yeah.
it's
understand
not
that.
a documentary.
Right.
And
Well,
that's
it
kind
I
is,
of
don't
been
but
my
think HBO
point.
would call it a documentary. I really don't.
Right. And
they
that's
do
kind of
call
my
Do
it.
they?
They
yeah,
absolutely, yeah.
yeah.
Okay, well, I don't think it's fair to call it a documentary necessarily.
And that's kind of been my overarching point is that you get guys on here who've been negative on Jaden Daniels the whole offseason and then takes that little snippet and it says, "See, I was right."
Right.
And that drives me nuts. And that's right to your point exactly, Steve. And that's what I can't stand with all that. And now that's the conversation with someone on social media and everything.
Right.
I'm like, just stop. Enjoy Hard Knocks, get a laugh, have a good time with it, and move on. There's nothing to evaluate. Knock it off.
And as somebody who's worked in the world of film and went to film school, it is a documentary. It's just the style and the voyeurism is if you're trying to be objective, it's not ideal.
I guess that's a better way of what
Yeah.
I was trying to say than what I originally said. I mean, okay, fine, documentary, but it is not an objective down the middle, show exactly
No.
what happened. It is
Right.
produced and edited for entertainment purposes.
Exactly.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Exactly.
And like we've done a lot of interviews on this show, not so many in the past couple of years, but you know, I mean, we could have cut those up to make them look dramatically different than they were, but we never cut up any of them because we just
Right.
wanted to do a down the middle thing, and that's not what HBO's doing.
We only ever cut out technical issues.
Right.
Like, that
That's
was
right. That's it.
We tried to keep it honest.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's our objective, like what we wanted to do. We want to keep
That's
honest with people. We leave in a lot of mistakes. You know, it's okay.
We have. It's like I said before, we've all made mistakes
Yeah.
on this show. We've probably
Right.
said some, you know, when you're talking off the cuff like this, stuff comes out wrong sometimes. I don't care how good you are at it. Some stuff comes out wrong.
I'm surprised none of us have gotten in any real trouble for it.
I think we didn't broadcast.
Anyway,
The one that really would have got us in trouble, we didn't broadcast.
that one we did edit. We did edit.
Alex knows which one it is.
Okay, so that wraps up the show. Steve did do an interesting article, though, that you guys should go check out about first-year head coaches in Washington's history and their success and all that kind of stuff.
Thereof.
Or mostly lack thereof. But let's be honest, that shouldn't surprise you.
You know what's the takeaway from that, and we do have to go, is that it is true to say the only two successful coaches in the past more than 50 years been George Allen and Joe Gibbs #1.
Right.
All of the rest of them, including Joe Gibbs #2, were failures. Ultimate in terms of the big picture, was it an up or a down? They were down.
Now, I would put a little side note on that. Those two inherited good teams, which helps.
Correct.
You know, George Allen took over a team that Vince Lombardi had built. So
Joe Gibbs inherited Joe Theismann.
Right. He inherited a team George Allen built. So
correct.
Look, yes. That also plays into it. Most of these guys, you got the job because we had to fire the last guy for sucking. Like, that's the way of the league.
But check it out. We don't need to go over all this right now. We were out of time, but check it out because I had fun writing it.
It is a fun thing to always talk about. All right, guys, that does it for this week's episode. We will see you next week.